When I was 17, my mother handed me an envelope while we stood in the gray drizzle outside a nearly empty bus station on the edge of town. Her mascara was perfect, her lipstick flawless, but her eyes looked through me like I was a stranger. I remember staring at the cheap paper and thinking, what is this? A birthday card? A letter? Some last-minute advice. But when I opened it, all it held was two $20 bills and a folded scrap of notebook paper with 6 words scribbled in her handwriting. Don't call us. This is tough love. Then she turned around, heels clicking on the wet concrete, and left me standing there with a duffel bag, $40, and a heart that had just been ripped out of my chest. My name's Jace. I'm 26 now. But that moment, seared into me like a burn, still bubbles up sometimes when I'm lying in bed or watching people hug their kids in airport terminals. And every time it does, I feel that same sinking realization. They didn't just want to teach me a lesson. They wanted to erase me. I guess to really understand how things got to that point, you'd have to know the family I came from. On paper, we looked kind of picture-perfect. 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. Dad ran his own contracting business. Mom worked part-time at a dental office. And we even had a golden retriever named Rusty, who liked to chase squirrels and knock over the trash can. I was the oldest. Then came my sister Bree, 2 years younger, followed by twins Maddie and Mason, who were 6 years younger than me. If you flipped through our photo albums, you'd see Christmas mornings and birthday cakes and summer pool parties, and you'd think we were one of those families that has their own group text and matching pajamas for the holidays. But if you looked closer, if you watched long enough, you'd see something else. You'd see the way Bree always got 2 gifts when I got one. You'd hear my dad say things like, "You're the oldest," Jace set an example, while my sister snuck out at night and got grounded for all of one evening. You'd notice how the twins got away with pretty much anything, while I got blamed if the sink was dripping or the back door was unlocked. It was subtle at first. A missed school recital here, a forgotten birthday there. Little things. Easy to brush off. But as I got older, it started to feel more like a pattern. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't supposed to feel like I belonged. I didn't really get into trouble. I wasn't the perfect kid, sure, but I did okay in school. I worked part-time at the gas station down the street, and I stayed out of the drama. I used to think that if I just kept my head down, if I worked hard and didn't complain, they'd see me. Not just look at me, but see me. They never did. Things started unraveling during the fall of my senior year. College applications were coming up, and I was working extra hours to save for fees since my parents had made it pretty clear they weren't paying for any of it. "If you want to go," Dad said one night while loading the dishwasher, "you better figure it out yourself." No one paid my way. Fair enough. I didn't expect a free ride. But then I overheard Mom talking to Bree one night in the living room about how she and Dad were setting aside some money for Bree's future plans. I remember sitting on the stairs, frozen, listening to that conversation like someone had poured ice water down my spine. I confronted them about it the next day. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just asked, "So, are you guys helping Bree with college?" Mom's eyes narrowed. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. "Bree's got a plan," he said. "She's going to do something smart with her life. Maybe community college, maybe something else. We're helping her get started." I just stared at them. "I've got a plan too," I said. "I want to major in computer science. I've already got a few scholarships lined up." Mom shrugged. "That's nice, Jace. But we've already done a lot for you. It's time you learned how to stand on your own." Stand on my own. As if I hadn't already been doing that for years. Still, I tried not to let it break me. I kept working. I applied to every scholarship I could find. I fixed up an old laptop from the thrift store so I could write my essays at night after work. I was tired all the time, but there was something inside me, some stubborn flame, that kept burning. I told myself it would all be worth it when I walked across that graduation stage and finally got out. But then came the fight, the one that changed everything. It started with something small. Mason had borrowed my earbuds and broken them. Again, when I told him he needed to replace them, he laughed and said, "Why? You're just going to leave soon anyway." I snapped. Not because of the earbuds, not really, but because it felt like no one in that house respected me. I yelled. He yelled. Bree got involved. Then Dad came storming into the room and, without even asking what happened, told me to get out if I was going to act like a selfish brat. That night, I slept at a friend's place. I thought maybe after things cooled down, we'd talk. Maybe finally, we'd have a real conversation. Instead, I got a call from Mom 2 days later telling me to come home and pack my things. No explanation. Just it's time. I showed up expecting a family meeting or at least some kind of adult conversation. But when I got there, my room was already half empty. My clothes were stuffed into a duffel. The laptop I'd fixed was gone. Dad claimed it was his because he'd paid the electric bill. And that's when they drove me to the bus station. No goodbye, no hug, just the envelope. I sat on that bench for an hour, staring at the note, rereading those 6 words until they blurred. Don't call us. This is tough love. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to beg them to change their minds. But more than anything, I wanted to prove them wrong. So I boarded that bus. I didn't know where it was going, not really. I just picked the first one I could afford. I spent that $40 carefully, rationed it like it was gold. When I got to the next city, I crashed on another friend's couch. Then I started over. Found a job washing dishes. Moved into a shared studio with 3 other guys. Took online courses at night when I wasn't too exhausted to keep my eyes open. Little by little, I built a life. A hard one. A hungry one. But it was mine. And while they forgot me, I never forgot them. Funny thing is, when you've been cast out like that, when your own blood tells you you're not worth sticking around for, something happens to you. You start to see the world differently. You stop waiting for someone to catch you. And if you're lucky, or just angry enough, you start climbing instead. That's exactly what I did. But that part comes later. Because the real story, the part that still makes my phone light up with voicemails and texts I'll never return, started years later, when I was 25. The company I'd built from nothing was starting to turn heads. I had my own office, my own place, my own car. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. And that's when my mother emailed me. The subject line? Hey stranger, can we talk? I stared at the email for a long time. It had been almost 9 years since I saw her last. Since she drove me to that bus station like she was dropping off dry cleaning. Since she handed me an envelope with $40 and a goodbye that might as well have been a death sentence. Don't call us. This is tough love. That line haunted me every time I passed a payphone in those early months, when I still half hoped they'd realize what they'd done and call me back. But they never did. Not once. And now, hey stranger? I didn't open it right away. I clicked out of my inbox and stared at the screen. My office was quiet, just the soft hum of the server rack in the corner and the distant thrum of downtown traffic below. My company, a tech consulting startup I'd built out of a co-working space and caffeine overdoses, had just hit its first million in profit. We had 5 employees, a clean balance sheet, and a backlog of clients. Things were good. I had a view. I had health insurance. I had peace. But my hands still trembled over the keyboard like I was 17 again, back on that bench, reading her note. I finally opened it later that night. Alone. The email was short. Jace, I know it's been a long time, and I don't expect you to forgive us overnight. But I was hoping we could talk. I've been thinking a lot about the past and how things went wrong. Bree misses you. So do the twins. Your father, well, he's trying. We'd like to see you again. Maybe rebuild what we had. Let me know. Love. Mom. Rebuild what we had. I didn't respond. At first, I thought I could just ignore it. Let it rot in my inbox like so many other spam messages I never opened. But the next morning, there was another email. Then a text. Then Bree found me on LinkedIn and sent me a message that said, heard you're doing big things. Proud of you, big bro. Big bro. Like we were tight. Like she hadn't looked me in the eye the day I left and said, well, maybe this is for the best. I'll be honest, I thought about deleting everything. Blocking them. Shutting the door for good. But something stopped me. Curiosity, maybe. Or spite. Or maybe some part of me wanted answers. Not closure, exactly. I'd built my own life. I didn't need them anymore. But I wanted to know why. Why it had been so easy for them to throw me away. So I replied. Just one line. You want to rebuild? Start by telling me why you buried me. No one answered for 2 days. Then Bree called. I let it go to voicemail. I still have that message saved. Hey Jace. It's me. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. Mom's been pretty upset since you replied. She didn't expect you to be so cold, but I told her, you've been through a lot. We all have. Maybe we could meet? Just talk. I think you'd be surprised at how things have changed. Changed. That was the word she used. But what she really meant was rearranged. A week later, I got another email, this one with an invitation. They were throwing a party for Mason and Maddie's college graduation. Both of them had gone to a private university upstate. I knew that from the news articles Mom used to post on Facebook. The ones I'd occasionally come across when I made the mistake of looking. They were the Golden Twins. The prodigies. Maddie had done pre-med. Mason was some kind of business major. There were photos, balloons, custom cakes, matching sweatshirts, family portraits with fake candids and sunlight streaming through the trees. I hadn't even been mentioned. Now, suddenly, they wanted me there. I almost laughed, but I didn't delete the invite. Something inside me, dark and quiet and growing, told me to wait. Then came the second email. This one was from my dad. We hadn't spoken since the day he tossed my duffel in the back seat and told me, "Don't come crawling back when the world chews you up." I used to play that quote in my head like a bad movie line. So when his email came through, I half expected it to be more of the same. But it wasn't. "Jace, I hear you've made something of yourself. That's good. I always knew you had potential. Maybe we didn't do things right when you were younger, but we had our reasons. Things were different back then. Bree tells me you're still holding on to some anger. Maybe it's time to let that go. Come see us. We can talk about what went wrong." Dad. He always wrote like a boss giving feedback on a mediocre quarterly report. Never said sorry. Just, we had our reasons. Just, maybe it's time. I didn't reply to that one either. But then things got stranger. One morning, I stopped by my old neighborhood. I don't know why. Nostalgia, maybe. Or masochism. The house looked the same. White siding, red shutters, a cracked driveway that still hadn't been repaved. But there was a new car in the driveway. A luxury SUV with a vanity plate that read TW1 Scrad. Of course. I was about to drive off when someone stepped outside. It was Maddie. She didn't see me. She was holding a cup of coffee, laughing into her phone. For a second, I thought about rolling down the window. But what would I even say? "Hey, remember me? The brother you dumped at a bus station?" I drove away. That night, I got another text. This time from an unknown number. "Heard you were in town. You should have stopped by. We saved a slice of cake." No name. But I knew who it was. They were watching, waiting, pretending like we were still a family. But the real breaking point came a few weeks later. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman's voice. Shaky. Nervous. "Hi, is this Jace?" "Jace Turner." "Yeah. Who's this?" "My name's Carla. I work at First Horizon Bank. I'm calling because there was a joint account application submitted with your name on it, and there are some unusual details we need to verify." I sat up straighter. "Joint account?" "Yes. It lists your name and Linda Turner? She claimed to be your mother." My chest went cold. "She also included some documents that don't quite match up. I just wanted to confirm. You did authorize this?" "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. I haven't spoken to her in years." "I thought so," she said quietly. "We'll flag the account and report the incident. But I thought you should know. She tried to use your name and EIN to add herself as a co-signer on a corporate account." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. They weren't just trying to reconnect. They were trying to access me, to get their hands on the thing I had built, the company they had nothing to do with, the business they'd forced me to create when they tossed me out and made it clear I was on my own. That night, I opened a bottle of scotch I'd been saving for a celebration. I poured a glass and stared at the city lights through my window. All I could hear were their voices. Bree's fake sympathy, Dad's management speak emails, Mom's soft, weaponized guilt. I picked up my phone, typed out a message. "You want to rebuild what we had? Fine. Let's start by going over the years you claimed I didn't exist, right after my lawyer finishes drafting the restraining order." I didn't send it. Not yet. Because something had shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was done. But if they wanted to open the door again, then I'd give them the full tour. Of everything they missed. Everything they tried to steal. And everything I'd become without them. But first, I had to dig a little deeper. Because I had a feeling that bank incident wasn't the first line they'd crossed. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be the last. The next morning, I deleted the draft. Not because I didn't mean it. Every word of that message had come from a place so real, so raw, I could have carved it into stone, but because I knew I wasn't ready. Not to send it. Not yet. Not because I was scared, but because something inside me had shifted. I didn't want a reaction anymore. I wanted a plan. I wanted control. It took a few days to get out of that haze, the weird emotional fog that rolled in after that call from the bank. I kept replaying it in my head. The way the woman's voice dipped when she said, "She claimed to be your mother." Like she knew. Like she'd seen that look before. And maybe she had. Maybe she'd talked to other people like me. People who'd been used, discarded, and then chased down once they made something of themselves. I thought I'd already hit rock bottom at 17. Alone at a bus station, counting coins for a vending machine dinner, calling community shelters from a prepaid phone just to find a place to sleep. But this felt worse. Because now I had something, and they still wanted to take it. That broke something in me all over again. For a while, I couldn't focus. I'd built this company, this life, out of nothing. But suddenly it all felt fragile. Like a gust of wind could knock it down. I stopped sleeping. I stopped responding to texts from the few friends I had. I canceled meetings. My team noticed. I caught them whispering in the break room once. Something about me seeming off. And they were right. I was off. I was unraveling, quietly. That's when I stopped showing up. For a week, maybe two, I didn't go into the office. I worked from home, if you could even call it that. I stared at spreadsheets without processing a single number. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I ordered takeout and didn't eat it. Let the containers pile up. I sat in silence and thought about everything I'd buried for the past decade. The resentment, the loneliness, the years of pretending it hadn't hurt. I thought about the nights I spent crashing on a busted couch, sharing a bathroom with 3 strangers in a roach-infested basement apartment. I thought about the one time I tried to call my dad when I had strep and no money for antibiotics, only to get his voicemail and never hear back. I thought about the time I sent Brie a Facebook message just to say happy birthday, and she blocked me 2 hours later. And now they wanted in. Now that I had an office and a company name on a building and a bank account worth noticing, it felt like drowning all over again. Only this time, the water was clearer, and I could see the people watching me sink. That was the fall. But the rise, that came slow. It started with an envelope. One day, I went to get my mail, and there it was. No return address. Just my name written in that familiar cursive that made my stomach twist. I brought it inside, locked the door, and sat on the couch with it in my hands for 10 minutes before I opened it. Inside was a single photo. Me, at around 9 years old, standing in the backyard with Rusty, our dog, and a model rocket I'd built from scratch. I was grinning. Wide, proud, innocent. On the back, written in faded pen, was, "You always were our little engineer, Mom." I dropped it. Not because it shocked me, but because I didn't remember the photo being taken. And now it felt like a threat. Like proof they still had pieces of me. Pieces I hadn't consented to give back. That night, something clicked. I looked around my apartment. Sleek, quiet, expensive, but empty. I thought about the people who did see me. The ones who stuck around even when I didn't reply for weeks. The college friend who let me crash on their couch when I was 17. The manager at the old pizza shop who gave me extra shifts and once slipped me $20 just because. The quiet mentors who'd replied to my emails when I cold asked for help building my first app. I'd spent so long trying to prove I didn't need anyone that I'd forgotten the people who deserved to be remembered. That's when I started rebuilding. Not the business. That part was fine. But me. I reached out to that old manager, Mike. He was retired now, living in Florida. We had a 2-hour phone call, and he told me he still had the little Arduino board I gave him when I moved out. "I knew you'd do something with your life," he said. "You were too angry not to." I texted Chris, the college friend who'd let me stay with him and his roommates for 4 months when I had nowhere else. He replied immediately, then sent a selfie of his dog wearing a party hat. "We're throwing a barbecue next weekend," he said. "You better show up." I started doing things that weren't about growth. I stopped checking revenue metrics every hour. I hired a business manager to handle the operations I'd been gripping like a lifeline. I took a weekend trip, completely solo, to the coast. Just a bag, a notebook, and the sound of waves. And I started therapy. I know how that sounds. Cliché. Oh, he went to therapy and found himself. But it wasn't like that. It was uncomfortable. Messy. My therapist, a woman named Lydia, didn't coddle me. She called me out. She asked the hard questions. Like, why haven't you told your team what's going on? And who are you trying to prove your worth to exactly? Sometimes I didn't have answers. Sometimes I left feeling worse. But slowly, I started making sense of it. I stopped defining my success as revenge, as a big neon sign saying, "Look what you lost." I started defining it as freedom, as peace, as having the choice to never hear from them again, and not needing to scream about it. Of course, that peace didn't last long, because a few months after the restraining order incident, Bree showed up. At my office. It was a Monday. I was mid-call with a client when Jenna, my assistant, buzzed in through the intercom. Hey, Jace, sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman here. Says she's your sister. Bree. I froze. I told the client I'd call them back. I hung up. My hands were sweating. When I stepped into the hallway, there she was. Bree. Same golden hair. Same magazine cover smile. But older. More tired around the eyes. She wore a blazer that didn't quite match her heels, like she was trying to dress up without knowing how. She looked smaller than I remembered. Jace, she said, almost like a sigh. I didn't speak. I know you probably don't want to see me, she continued. But I didn't know Mom tried to use your name. I swear. That wasn't me. I wouldn't do that. I still didn't say anything. I just wanted to talk. Just one coffee. Please. And I almost said no. But then I thought, if she came this far, maybe I should hear what she has to say. Not for her, but for me. So I told her to meet me across the street at the cafe in 30 minutes. Not in my office. Not in my space. If she wanted to talk, she'd do it on my terms. What she told me in that cafe unraveled everything I thought I knew about what really happened the night they left me at that bus station. And it wasn't what I expected. The cafe was half empty, sun streaming through the windows and bouncing off the polished floor like it had no idea someone's entire world was about to tilt. Bree was already seated by the time I walked in, stirring a cappuccino she probably hadn't touched. She looked nervous. Not scared. Bree never did scared, but uncomfortable in a way that was new. The blazer was gone. She'd changed into a sweater and jeans, something more familiar. More apologetic, maybe. I sat across from her without saying a word. She looked at me for a long time. You look different. I raised an eyebrow. I mean, you look good, she clarified. Like, not angry anymore. I didn't bother telling her that I was still angry, that it just lived in a quieter place now. I let the silence stretch until she finally caved. Okay, she sighed. You want the truth. So I'll give it to you. I leaned back, arms folded. Go on. Bree stared down at her hands. That night, at the bus station, Mom told us it was your choice to leave. I didn't move. She said you decided you didn't want to live by their rules anymore, that you were going to crash with friends until you could figure things out. I almost laughed. Seriously? She even showed us a note, Bree said. Looked like you wrote it. Said something about wanting to be independent. My jaw clenched. That note was hers. I know that now, she said quickly. But back then, I believed her. We all did. She told us you left because you couldn't handle responsibility, that you were flunking school, stealing money from her purse, lying about where you were going. I wasn't. I know, Jace. That hit me harder than I expected, because it meant the years I spent wondering why my siblings never reached out weren't just because they didn't care. It was because they thought I was the villain. She kept your phone, Bree continued. Said you didn't want it anymore. Told us not to contact you because it would just drag us into your drama. Dad didn't argue. He just went along with it. Of course he did. And you? I asked. You went along with it too? Bree hesitated. I was 16. I didn't know how to push back. I figured if you really wanted to talk to me, you would have found a way. I was 17, I snapped. With $40 and no place to live. Forgive me if reconnecting wasn't high on the to-do list. She flinched. I deserve that. Damn right you do. She nodded slowly, as if she'd rehearsed this next part. A few years later, I started asking questions. I saw your name pop up online. Articles. Startup blogs. Something didn't add up. You were supposed to be some dropout burnout, remember? But you were out there building stuff. Thriving. And yet, you didn't reach out. I was scared, she admitted. Not of you. Of them. Of the truth. She looked at me again, and this time, her eyes weren't full of guilt. They were full of something else, resolve. I left 2 years ago. Moved out. Cut contact. Mom went ballistic, of course. Said I was ungrateful. Said I was turning into you. She gave a bitter laugh. Guess that was the last straw for her. I blinked. That part. I hadn't expected. Wait. You're not living with them. Not anymore. I've been working for a nonprofit. Running outreach for kids aging out of foster care. That hit me like a brick to the chest. Bree looked at me cautiously. I've seen what it's like. For kids who get dropped with nothing. It's part of why I came today. Not just to apologize. To help. I narrowed my eyes. Help with what? She leaned in, lowering her voice. You're not the only one Mom tried to use. Then she pulled out a small black notebook from her bag and placed it gently on the table. What is this? Proof. I opened it. Inside were photocopies, screenshots, and handwritten notes. Bank statements, property transfers, emails. One document jumped out immediately. An application for a joint business loan using my name and EIN, but signed with Dad's handwriting. My stomach dropped. Jesus, I muttered. They tried 3 times, Bree said. Once at First Horizon, once at a credit union, once through some online lender. Each time, they changed just enough of your details to avoid setting off red flags. But I kept digging. Why? Because they did the same thing to me when I left. I looked at her sharply. They took out a loan in my name, she said. 10 grand. Claimed it was for community college. But the money never hit my account. I didn't even know about it until the collections call started. I sat back, stunned. I reported it. Had to jump through hoops to get it removed. But after that, I started watching them. Quietly. Collecting what I could. At first it was just for closure. But now, I think it's time someone made them pay. I looked down at the notebook again. Each page felt like a loaded gun. You really did all this? She nodded. I knew I'd never get justice for what they did to me. But maybe I could help you get yours. We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, you sure you're ready for what that means? Bree looked at me with something close to defiance. They already burned me. I've got nothing left to lose. I closed the notebook and slid it into my bag. Okay, I said. Then let's make a plan. The next few weeks were a blur of late-night calls, spreadsheet audits, and legal consultations. I contacted Lydia, my therapist, and told her I might be stepping into dangerous waters. She said, just make sure you're doing this to protect yourself, not to punish them. But it wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about clarity, about exposing everything they'd tried to bury. Step 1, secure my company. I met with my legal team and had every possible ownership and banking credential locked behind multi-factor authorization and legal protections. We restructured certain assets, tightened internal security. Bree's notebook had spooked me. If they'd been willing to forge signatures and falsify records, I wasn't taking any chances. Step 2, information control. I hired a private investigator, not to dig up dirt, but to confirm it. Cross-reference Bree's evidence. Validate every document. I needed to know that if I pressed go on this, nothing would blow back on me. That I could walk into a courtroom or a boardroom with a binder and a bulletproof story. Step 3, go public, but quietly. I had a friend in journalism. Someone I'd met years ago at a tech conference. She owed me a favor. I asked if she'd be willing to run a story, an expose on financial abuse, family fraud, the hidden cost of tough love. No names at first, just a narrative. She said yes. Step 4, the confrontation. Not yet. Not face-to-face. But soon. In the meantime, I started building something else. Something poetic. I found out that the house, the same one they kicked me out of, was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. They were upside down on a second loan. Property taxes overdue. Utilities stacked up. They were bleeding money. I reached out to a third-party investment firm I occasionally collaborated with. Made them an offer. Cash deal. Silent partner. No names attached. 2 weeks later, I owned the lien on my parents' house. Bree cried when I told her. Not because of the revenge, but because for once, the power was in our hands. For once, we weren't just clawing out of a hole. We were building the trap. Carefully. Strategically. And soon, it would snap shut. But I wasn't done. Not until I had one last conversation. With him. Because if there was one person I still hadn't heard from, it was my father. And what he had to say would determine exactly how far I was willing to go. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone finally lit up with a call from a blocked number. I let it ring twice before answering. My voice was steady, calm, professional. Jace Turner. A pause, then the familiar gravel of my father's voice, the same voice that once told me to man up when I had a 102-degree fever and a biology exam. Jace, it's your dad. I let the silence sit heavy between us before answering. I figured. I heard you've been talking to Bree. Among others. He cleared his throat. She says you're digging into things. That you've got some story cooked up about us forging documents. About loans. Property. That you're trying to destroy us. I smiled to myself. I'm not trying to destroy you, Dad. I'm just shining a light. If that burns you, that's not my fault. Another pause. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth. We made mistakes, all right? But we're still your family. You don't get to erase that. You're right, I said. I don't have to erase anything. You already did. Then I hung up. I didn't need to hear excuses. I didn't need to hear his half-baked rationalizations about doing what they thought was best or trying to teach me a lesson. I already knew the truth. I'd lived it. And now, it was time for them to live with what they had done. The next day, the story went live. It didn't have names. Not yet. Just the title. Thrown away. When tough love becomes financial abuse. My friend at the paper did a hell of a job. She took my interview, Bree's documents, the investigator's findings, and shaped them into a piece that was both damning and heartbreakingly human. She talked about the rising number of young adults who'd been cut off, manipulated, and even defrauded by their own parents under the guise of discipline. She quoted me anonymously, of course, describing the night I was left at the bus station and the years it took to claw my way back. But what really stuck was the kicker. The detail about the forged loan applications and the attempt to siphon money from a successful company built by a son they'd discarded. The article gained traction fast. Social media ran wild with it. Comments poured in. This was my life too. Parents like this are narcissists. Where's the justice for kids like him? It struck a nerve. And within 48 hours, someone leaked the names. I didn't do it, but someone did. I knew the fallout would come quickly after that, and it did. Mom lost her job at the dental clinic when the office manager read the article and recognized the story. Apparently, Mom had bragged more than once about her tech genius son, but left out the part where they tried to rob him blind. The clinic didn't want the PR mess. She was asked to resign. Dad's contracting business, which was already limping, got slammed with online reviews citing the article. Clients canceled. Suppliers backed out. He tried to do damage control, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, but the receipts were there. Literal receipts. And then came the cherry on top. The lien. I gave them a month. A full 30 days to catch up on the missed mortgage payments. A certified letter arrived on their doorstep, outlining the debt, the transfer of lien ownership, and the upcoming auction date. They ignored it. So the auction happened. They showed up, red-faced and sputtering, trying to argue that it was all some big mistake. That they'd been in that house for over 20 years. That nobody kicks a family out like this. I watched from my car across the street, tinted windows up, engine idling. They never saw me. The house sold that afternoon. To me. Officially, it was purchased by a holding company I controlled, run through 3 layers of shell entities and trust protections. I wasn't looking for more drama. I wasn't trying to shove it in their faces. I just wanted to take back what was mine. The final nail came a week later, when I sent them each a letter. Printed, sealed, hand-delivered. Inside was a copy of the original restraining order I'd filed after the bank incident. Below that, stapled, was a single sheet of paper with the closing summary from the house auction. And below that, a handwritten note. Don't call me. This isn't tough love. This is closure. Bree cried when I showed her the final documents. Not because she felt sorry for them, but because, for the first time, she felt seen, heard, understood. She helped me box up the few items left in the old house that mattered. Old photos. A couple of tools from the garage that were technically mine. One broken trophy from a science fair I won when I was 10, something I hadn't seen in years. Mom had packed it away like it was an embarrassment. I didn't keep the trophy. I tossed it in a donation bin on the way home. Because I didn't need proof of who I'd been anymore. I knew who I was now. In the months that followed, I stopped checking the news alerts. I didn't need updates on their lives. Bree kept in touch, and she was doing better, freer. She started therapy too. We even laughed about it one night over drinks. Both of us wondering how we'd survived a family so hell-bent on image they forgot what love actually looked like. My company kept growing. We moved into a bigger office. I hired 2 more engineers. I started sleeping better. Some nights, I still dream of that bus station, of standing alone in the rain with a crumpled envelope and no one looking back. But the dream always ends differently now. In the new version, I don't watch them walk away. I turn around first, and I walk forward. Because I'm not the kid they abandoned anymore. I'm the man who came back, not to beg for love, but to reclaim his life. And the final time I saw their house, as the movers packed the last box into the truck and the front door closed behind me for good, I left the porch light on. Not for them, but for the version of myself who never stopped believing he deserved better. He finally got it.